It's a big night in Smashville. Tonight, the Nashville Predators take on the Dallas Stars in what feels like a must-win game for a struggling Predators team. Can they beat Dallas at home at Bridgestone Arena tonight? We have a special crossover event for you today. Our friend Dane Lewis at Locked On Stars joins us. We're going to talk about how these two teams have been performing in recent games. We're going to talk trade deadline and predict who's going to win tonight's game at Bridgestone.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for joining us at Locked On Predators, and thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at ontheforecheck.com, and I'm going to be joined soon by my partner in crime, Nick Morgan, who also writes at ontheforecheck.com. We have a special crossover episode for you today with our friend Dane Lewis from Locked On Stars. We're going to talk about everything you need to know to be ready for tonight's Dallas Stars Nashville Predators game.
Well, welcome in, everyone. This is Dane Lewis with the Locked On Stars podcast, joined now by both hosts of the Locked On Predators podcast, Nick Morgan and Ann Kimmel. How are you guys today?
Pretty good.
That's good. Glad to collaborate with both of you guys at the same time. I know that we've worked together separately, and I know Predators fans, you've probably heard my voice on different podcasts with each of the respective hosts, but now we're all together. Our teams may not like each other very much, but, as a host of the shows, we can, get along pretty well with one another, I'd say.
Yeah.
It's a good group project.
Yeah. We're a package deal. So whichever the box goes.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, this is, the last go around for these teams, the Stars and the Predators here in the regular season. Been a pretty competitive season series so far. Nashville has won 2 games. Dallas has won 1. But they've all been close, and the most recent one did go into overtime, went into a shootout, if I'm not mistaken, where the Nashville Predators did come out on top. But I know the month of February has been a little bit of, not the easiest sledding for this Predators team. What has kind of happened over the past month or so that's put the Predators where they are now, which is second in the wild card spot out west, as opposed to where they were around the All-Star break, which was around second in the division?
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. February hasn't exactly been a great month for the Nashville Predators. In fact, Ann and I kind of broke down on a podcast not too long ago, which was, I'm sure, fun for our viewers. But basically, you kind of think back towards November and December, even kind of the start of January, the Preds went on that really, really good run. They wound up being first place in the West for a while. And they kind of really got away from everything that made that team super sharp. The discipline kind of went out the door. The Predators started racking up penalties each and every game. They kind of nonchalantly playing in their own zone, a lot of turnovers, a lot of giveaways. And then as a result, you would kind of see these games where the Predators would dominate for 95% of the game. But in that 5%, whoever they're playing just jumped on them. And that wound up being the difference in the game. So luckily against San Jose on Saturday, where the Preds just absolutely destroyed them, you kind of saw them finally for the first time, and Ann, elaborate if you want, that I can remember them really playing a complete 60-minute game on both ends of the ice in a very long time.
No, I would agree with that. I think we saw quintessential what the Predators have struggled with when we played the Seattle Kraken last week. And that was an instance where the Seattle Kraken scored 3 goals in 3 minutes. And those are the kind of lapses that the Nashville Predators have fallen into, especially in February, that have really had them falling in the standings. And there are simple things to clean up, but you actually have to execute the cleanup. And that's what they have been struggling with at times.
Yeah, and do you think, I mean, this is something I even talked about before the last matchup, and it obviously didn't play too much of a factor, But, there's been a lot of, I guess, emotions is the word
Mhm.
for this Predators team in February. You had Pekarine's number getting retired. You had the Stadium Series game against Tampa Bay, which is just a unique experience for these Southern-based franchises like Nashville, like Dallas, to have these outdoor games. Do you think that any of those kind of extracurricular things have affected this team? Because I know the Stars have fallen victim to that kind of stuff in the past and even this season, we had a jersey retirement night, and then the Stars went out and put up 0 goals in that game. And so, do you think that that's played any factor into this past month for Nashville? And now that that's kind of behind them, they'll move on and go onward and upward, or not really?
Well, I think you kind of saw that a little bit in the Seattle game. We described it as almost like that Monday back after a nice vacation. The Predators, of course, had the Pecorine jersey night against you guys, Dane.
Hmm.
And then the Stadium Series after that, where, even though they lost the actual game itself, it was a big night, kind of a lot of different stuff in terms of game presentation. The players, even the next day, did like a nice little family skate. And then the reality hit where you have to come back and actually play an NHL hockey game. Not only that, but you're entering a stretch run that's probably going to be the most important for the year for the Preds. And I do think, they looked a little sluggish out of the gate. Like they really weren't ready to ramp up kind of back into their normal routine. You definitely saw that against Seattle. San Jose, hopefully, maybe a better sign of things to come, that they've gotten over that and are now kind of getting back to, okay, the party's over, nothing really to look forward to except the playoffs. And now that's what we have to work towards.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would
and
agree with that. It's a hockey hangover going on here in Nashville right now for sure.
mhm. Yeah, certainly seems to be that way. And I know that, now it really is springtime. Baseball doesn't seem to be really anywhere close. So I feel like more people are maybe starting to tune into hockey. And so with the playoffs on the horizon, hopefully that incentivizes some of these teams to play up to the level that they need to. And I think Nashville will, likely from what we've seen this season, follow suit on that. But the big name on the roster right now, I know for you guys, and there's kind of curiosity of whether or not he's still going to be on the roster by the end of March, is of course Filip Forsberg. From you guys' perspective, where do you think he will end up by the trade deadline? Do you think he still will be a Nashville Predator? Do you think he's going somewhere else? How do you guys see it unfolding?
Yeah, this is the hot topic in Nashville, and really it's kind of becoming the hot topic in the NHL. Where is Filip Forsberg going to land? And this is something that everybody here is kind of watching with bated breath. Every day we wake up and think, is this the day? Maybe today we'll find out that he's signed. And it's very interesting because this whole Filip Forsberg saga is just not happening in a vacuum. And I think so much of how the Nashville Predators are playing between now and the trade deadline can have an impact on the decision that David Poile makes. Our general manager, David Poile's been very clear that he wants to sign Filip Forsberg. He wants him here in Nashville. And I think that's the general sentiment from everybody. They would like to re-sign him here, but it just hasn't happened yet. And I think there's a temptation, on Filip Forsberg's part to really kind of test the market, because I think he could probably find some teams that may pay him more than what David Poile is willing to pay him. So it's so very up in the air right now, which feels horrible to everybody here in Nashville. But I think the sentiment here is we want him signed. David Poile is very clear he wants him signed, but it just hasn't happened yet. And every day that goes by that he doesn't sign, it just feels a little more uncomfortable.
Yeah, and it's almost like PTSD from Ryan Suter 10 years ago this summer, where everybody was like, okay, he's not re-signed, but we're close, so we're going for it. It's just a matter of time. And then when he went to Minnesota instead, that kind of set the Preds back. So I think fans are definitely anxious. When you talk to them on Twitter or read the message boards or whatever, you hear a lot of them saying, I don't want to risk it. If Filip's not signed by March 21st, then the Preds need to trade him for something. But at the same time, you look back at David Poile's past couple of trade deadlines. Mikael Granlund was an unrestricted free agent the past 2 seasons. Poile had a chance to trade him. He didn't. Same thing for Craig Smith a couple years ago. Nick Bonino was another guy who reportedly got, looked at the deadline. Even last year, Ryan Ellis and Matthias Ekholm, two names that a lot of teams were interested. There are reportedly some offers on the table. Poyle said no to them both because he thought the Preds still had a chance to turn things around and win. So if the Predators are anywhere close to even contending for a playoff spot, I don't think Filip Forsberg goes everywhere. I think you're going to see him until the end of this year in a Nashville Predators uniform. What happens after that? That's a great question.
Yeah, it seems to really be up in the air, and I agree. I think that this Nashville team is not the same without Filip Forsberg. Just the small sample size I've seen from them this year, 3 Stars games, and then a few other nationally televised games. Such a gifted player, and obviously in the top 3 in scoring on this Predators team for a reason. And we're gonna flip the script here in just a second. I'll be fielding some Stars questions from Nick and Ann, but before we do that, do want to take a moment and say thank you to one of the sponsors of today's crossover episode, and that is betonline.net. Football might be over for this season, but basketball is in full swing for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, total player prop performances, to where the next fired coach is going to land, betonline.net is the #1 spot for all your betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline.net, where the game starts.
Yeah, Dane, I know you were asking us some questions about the Preds before the break. I kind of want to get your thoughts on the current Dallas Stars. And one thing that's kind of jumped out to me over the last couple of months or so is how much the depth guys have stepped up for the Stars. It's not every day you see Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn kind of down the pecking order a little bit in the scoring standings. And yet the Stars are still winning, and they're doing very good. And they have a lot of guys stepping up, it seems.
Yeah, it's been a weird year, and you're totally right. This is a Stars team that has been led literally by Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin for years because alternate captain, but also statistically being led by this team, by those two guys. And so it's odd to kind of see these new names assert themselves, whether it's Rupe Hintz or Jason Robertson or even Joe Pavelski, who's an NHL veteran but new to the Dallas Stars. But yeah, the veteran guys that are also the third line, fourth line guys have kind of stepped up over the past few weeks and made a huge impact on this team that I think has helped propel the Stars to where they're at now. They've really been struggling for secondary scoring all season outside of their top line. And a lot of that really had to do with the lack of scoring from Seguin and Benn. Seguin has found his footing a little bit post All-Star break. Jamie Benn is still getting there a little bit. He's had some good games against Winnipeg over the last stretch of the month or so. But I think that's just part of the division rivalry that we have there with them. But yeah, this has been a weird season for secondary scoring for the Stars. Alexander Radulov is now back down on the fourth line, which he's, playing good minutes, just not getting a whole lot of production points wise. And I know he finally got a goal, or I think he hadn't scored in over a month or 2 months, and then he finally got a goal on Wednesday night against the Kings.
That breaks our heart to hear that he's struggling, by the way.
Every time we play you guys, I do think, oh, it's his old team. Maybe there's a little bit there, but it's not nothing there. I guess maybe one more try to dazzle the Nashville crowd one more time, because this is the last year on his deal. So who knows where he's going to end up by the end of the offseason, or maybe the trade deadline. I don't think that he's going to be a really heavily shopped item at the trade deadline, but I guess you never know. But yeah, just a weird year all around, and a lot of rookies making their NHL debut. We had a rookie who's played several games in the league so far this year, finally score his first NHL goal in Minnesota on Sunday, where he actually grew up just 30 minutes from the arena. So that was really cool. Riley Tufte getting his first goal. So yeah, been a weird kind of odd bunch of characters filling out that bottom six and even some of the bottom defenseman spots for the Stars team. But the consistency on the top line has been good, and they've just needed some support on most nights from the goaltending, the defense, and secondary scoring. And it seems we're getting all those pieces to finally come together at the right time.
So when you're talking about some goals and people who are having success scoring, let's talk about Jason Robertson for a minute. He's coming off of back-to-back hat trick games. What is going on with his game that's happening, that's helping him see this kind of success? What do you think is maybe different, or what is finally clicking for him?
Yeah, I think a huge part of it is the fact that he gets to play on a line with Joe Pavelski every single day. Rupe Hintz is a good player in his own right, but also still young, still kind of developing his game. But Joe Pavelski, like we said, NHL veteran who's done his stuff for so long, and I'm the people who cover the Stars along with me that I've had on the show or read their articles kind of say the same thing. I mean, just working with the guy who has that kind of work ethic, who has the offensive scoring ability that he has, but also he brings his own style. Jason Robertson does. He kind of has this almost innocent look on the ice where he just kind of looks like a nice go lucky kind of kid. And that's, I mean, he's not really the enforcer or bully kind of player like a Jamie Benn or, an Alexander Radulov get in your face kind of guy. He's not afraid of the contact, but he's also, not going to be the one to issue it out, but he can take it with the best of them. And I think he just uses his body and his skill set really well because he's a big guy, not the biggest guy on the ice, but still, pretty strong and pretty big. So not afraid to go down by the net where there could be a lot of bodies. And even when he's down there, he's not just got the power, he can handle a stick a little bit. And so he's really just a very versatile player, very smart, and also very young. So that means a lot of speed and a lot of agility right now. And he's also super cheap as he's still on his rookie deal. I think he's being paid like under 800,000 this year, but going to be a restricted free agent in the offseason. So I imagine that Jim Nill and company will be looking to give him a pretty big paycheck in the summer. And I think many Stars fans echo that sentiment and hope that we see Jason Robertson here in Dallas for a while because he's truly a special player. I know last year he lost out in the Calder race to Kirill Kaprizov, and I think both those guys, Kaprizov and Robertson, are proving that there's no sophomore slump and that they both still very much belong in this league. And I think now the rest of the NHL is kind of taking notice on Jason Robertson. I think last year they were like, okay, yeah, good rookie year, on a struggling Dallas team. But now it's like, hey, this Dallas team has a shot at the playoffs, and this kid's really good. He leads the team in goals, second on the team in scoring. Like you said, just a fantastic season from him so far.
Yeah, you mentioned guys that you want to see in Dallas for a long time. John Klingberg, I'm sure, is one of those guys. Kind of threw everybody for a loop earlier this year when there's talk about him maybe being traded, maybe him wanting to leave Dallas. What is that situation like now? And do you see him even potentially maybe being involved in some sort of hockey trade? Or do you think Dallas is really going to buckle down, try to get this contract situation under control?
Yeah, it's been quite the ordeal. I mean, even back a month or two ago, maybe a little bit after Christmas, after all those COVID pauses, there was kind of that rumor that, hey, John Klingberg wants out of Dallas. He's not going to get this 8-year deal that he wants, which I still don't think is the case. He does want Miro Heiskanen level money, but he's like 6 years older than Miro Heiskanen and definitely not the player that he once was, but still a good player and had a really good game on Sunday against the Wild, but also has had some really bad games this year. And so his trade value is probably going up and down every single day, like the stock market, I guess, if you will. That's a weird illusion for a hockey player, but yeah, I think at this point in the season, the Stars are likely going to look to keep the roster pretty much the same. They don't really have very much cap room really to move guys around or add a big piece at the trade deadline. They probably would like to, but I just don't think it's going to be possible. If there is a guy that's going to get dealt, it's probably going to be Klingberg with his contract expiring. And there's a good chance he could still leave in the offseason if he wants that big 8-year deal. So, and the Stars may just say, hey, if he's going to leave, let's try to get something for him, even if it is draft picks, a few prospects, a bottom 6 kind of player. I can see it happening, but also would not be shocked if the Stars just let the trade deadline come and go without making any big moves. Because I think as of right now, this unit that they have is playing really well. They're probably having one of their better stretches of the season. And so unless something drastic happens between now and the deadline, I imagine that the pieces will stay pretty well intact. And I think that includes John Klingberg. And he's really a good piece for the Stars team if they do make the postseason. He's been a fantastic postseason performer really ever since he's been a Dallas Star.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the same situation as Filip Forsberg in Nashville, doesn't it? I mean, just kind of that really good player is going to help you in the playoffs, but is it worth maybe keeping him or maybe trading him, depending on how good the team is. So it's kind of funny that they're in the same situations there. Want to talk more about the game tonight, but first, though, want to mention our friends at RockAuto.com. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models on the road, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. So why endure all that pointless questioning from the people at the front desk asking you about makes or models? You have no idea what they're talking about. Be honest. You have computers with access to rockauto.com that will help you sort out all the nonsense and keep money in your pocket. Rock Auto saves you both time and money. So why would you choose to spend 30, 50, or even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Rock Auto is also a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, and their prices are relatively low for every customer. So go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Well, we're talking about Preds versus Stars tonight, the finale of the rivalry, I guess you say. Dane, I know we've talked about it. They've gone back and forth so many times this year. Each game has been close. You got to think it's going to be the same way tonight, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Just about every division game for this Stars team this season has been close. Even the games against Arizona, as much as I hate to admit that, but that's just how it is in the Central this year. It's a competitive division. Really, realistically, you still have 6 teams in contention for the playoffs. Winnipeg's starting to slide out a little bit, but then they'll always rattle off 2 or 3 games in a row to stay in the picture. So it's just an absolute, slugfest night in and night out. And now with both these teams sitting where they're at, 1 and 2 in the wild card spot, I think that adds a little extra incentive because now Minnesota's starting to slip. And so one or both of these teams could be vying for that spot. And in all reality, neither team is that far behind St. Louis in second. So I think both these teams recognize there's a lot on the line, and it's much better to be in the top 3 in the division than the wild card come playoff time.
For sure. So one of the things that we have talked about, I know with Nashville, is special teams and how special teams kind of can affect the game. We look back at the most recent game. Each team had opportunities on the power play. Neither team could capitalize on it. How are special teams in Dallas, and how do you see that affecting the outcome of this game?
Yeah, I think it's going to play a pretty big role. The special teams are in a weird space because most of the season, the story has been the power play has been really good. The penalty kill has been below average or, okay some nights, but pretty much below average. But now the narrative has almost flipped where ever since the All-Star break, the Stars are like a top 3 unit in the league as far as penalty kill. They're almost better defensively on the ice when they're playing 4-on-5. And I've been getting more excited as of late whenever the Stars are on the man disadvantage rather than when they have an extra man, because the power play has been next to non-existent outside of this last game against the Wild, where I think they finally had a multiple goal power play point game for the first time in what felt like months, maybe even since the All-Star game. So it's been really weird. And every time they do score a power play goal, or at least, have some sort of life and heartbeat on the power play, it's like, okay, maybe it's finally coming back because this has really been a defining aspect for this Stars team this season. And they're really, really a much better team when the power play is buzzing on all cylinders. It really hasn't been there. Hopefully they can get it here in Nashville, because I know Nashville has historically this season been the same way. They've been a consistent top 10 team on the power play. So how do you guys see it shaping out for Nashville on the side of special teams in this game?
Well, that's still very weird to hear because as Predators
It
fans
is.
will attest to, power play hasn't exactly been the cornerstone of the franchise the past 5 years. But you're right. I mean, the Predators' top power play line has been on fire this season, and they've done a lot of damage. You kind of look at them compared to last year when They were very bad. And you kind of just see a total revamp of that unit, not just the people that are on there, because the people that are on there are relatively the same. I mean, Forsberg, Duchesne, Johansson, Yossi. So those groups pretty much the same, but it's how they're playing. There's a lot more movement. There's a lot more priority and kind of getting the defense twist around as opposed to just getting the puck in one spot and ready, aim, fire. So it's kind of a different philosophy. But the thing is, and the thing I wanted to talk about a little bit here, Dane, was I think depth. We talked about this earlier. Depth is going to be the key, I think, tonight. And I know you and I have talked about past the herd line versus the guys like Rube Hintz, but there's a little bit of a twist now in that the Preds' fourth line, Michael McCarron, Matt Luff, and Phil Tomasino, they have been on a tear. Of course, they had a big scoring game against San Jose on Saturday, but even before that, I mean, me and Anna talked about this before. They've been the Preds' most consistent line just in terms of play. And, you know, I know you talked earlier about like Riley Tufte getting his first goal the other night. They have guys like Luke Glendening now on your end. And yeah, even though Radiloff's on the fourth line now, we know he has the ability to just get on a hot streak at any time and score really good goals. So to me, that is going to be the interesting thing to watch tonight, is just the bottom half of that forward group.
Yeah, I agree. I think that really can be where the game is either won or lost. Because yeah, we all know the top tier talent for both these teams is some of the best in the NHL on a good night. And so yeah, I think especially you said Luke Glendening and Michael Raffles, another guy that the Stars got in the offseason from Philadelphia, who's been, you know, hovering in the bottom six pretty much all season, not getting a lot of goals, but just a lot of really smart players at the bottom six for the Dallas Stars. Jacob Peterson is a rookie who's been on the bottom six pretty much ever since day one. He actually scored the first goal of the season for the Stars against the Rangers, which was so weird because everyone was excited and then everyone was like, who is this guy? So really good season from him. He's actually built really good chemistry with Alexander Radulov. So hopefully, you know, Radulov either passing to him or, you know, working with him along the boards, they can get a little something going. But yeah, I think that that's really going to play a huge part. And I also think the goalie matchup has the potential to be very exciting if we see UC Saros from Nashville and if Jake Ottinger gets the start, which I imagine he will, given the month that he's had.
Yeah, he has been, Ottinger's really playing very good hockey. UC Saros, since the All-Star game, we've been he's maybe not been peak UC Saros like what we saw earlier, but the UC Saros of old came back against San Jose. I think for Nashville, it's the question of which team is going to show up. Is it going to be the team that played the Seattle Kraken that can't get out of their own way, or is it going to be the team that played San Jose, who can execute near flawlessly? And I think that's going to have to be the performance the Predators have if they want to beat this Stars team. So if we're talking predictions, how do you see this game playing out, Dane? And give us your prediction for score.
Sure. I think this one has the potential to be somewhere in the middle, nothing too crazy high scoring, but not too low scoring. Like I think both goalies will have good games, but still let a few slip by. I can imagine it also going to overtime, and I think that would make the game a little sweeter just because, like we said, even before we started recording, never a dull moment with these teams, and always fun to watch it come down to the wire. I can see this game really going either way. I think the Stars are really hot right now. They've won 4 straight, including 2 on the road. They're pretty much all their games in March are on the road. I think they only have like 3 more home games between now and the end of the month. And so if they really want to continue what they're doing, being in, you know, contention for a top 3 spot in the division, they need to close out this particular road trip with the win. And I think they have the capability to do that because Winnipeg and Minnesota are both really tough venues to play in. Nashville, also a tough venue, a tough team. And I think Dallas is ready to take on that challenge. And, you know, then they're off for the next several days. I don't think they play until Saturday. So I think that they'll be excited and ready to kind of close the chapter of this road trip and then get, you know, take the mind off game hockey for a little bit. So my prediction will be 4-3 Stars, and I can definitely see it going to overtime.
I'm going to switch that a little bit. I'm going to go 4-3 Predators. The thing we haven't really talked about, this is kind of close to a must-win game for Nashville. Maybe not this particular game being must win, but this stretch. They have got to get hot during the stretch because they play a lot of teams where they are fighting for ground against in that Western Division. They also have other teams coming up like Toronto, who's been very, very good in the East. So these are all very, very good teams. This is where the Preds are going to make or break their season. And they're coming in first game at Bridgestone Arena since the Stadium Series. They're going to be fired up. They're going to be focused. They're going to be a little bit refreshed after that San Jose game. I think the fact that they just straight up whooped the Sharks as bad as they did, I think that gave them a little bit of a confidence reset, and you're going to see them coming out here guns a-blazing. And I think that home crowd is going to help Nashville propel past the Stars tonight.
And I'm going to go here with Nick. Not to play favorites here, but I think that because it's in Nashville, I think that gives Nashville a little bit of an advantage, just that home arena advantage. And I also think they're coming in confident, but aware. I think they're very aware of what they have to do to beat a team like Dallas. I think this is going to be some really fantastic goaltending. I think it's going to be a 3-2 game. I also can see this going to overtime. I'm going to give the advantage to the Preds, but this is going to be a close one.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems that we're due for a good matchup every time, and I'm excited to watch it unfold. And this is the finale of the regular season, but if things fall the right way, maybe we'll get ourselves a 7-game playoff series with these teams.
Let's do it. Bring it on.
Yeah, that would for sure be a good time. But thank you guys, Nick and Ann, for crossing over today. Really do appreciate working with you guys and getting to talk a little bit of hockey.
Yeah, thanks, Dane. Thanks for having us.
Nick and I want to thank Dane Lewis once more for joining us on today's crossover episode of Locked On Predators. Thanks for all your insight and information. We'll see whose prediction comes true tonight when the Predators take on the Stars at Bridgestone Arena. Puck drop will be at 7 p.m. On tomorrow's show, we will have your complete game breakdown and analysis, including our one word to describe the game. Let's hope we don't have to use the naughty words. Hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.